Hello learners, I am Dr. Subodh Kesharwani working with Indira Gandhi National Open University in School of Management Studies. The topic which I am going to talk today is working with PowerPoint. We have a very elaborative sessions on this particular course called BCOS 183, which is known as Computer Application in Business, which is part of our BCom program. And we have already talked about a lot of sessions related to computers, related to softwares, web applications, business information systems, how the data is going to play a very important role, and what are the DBMS or the business process, and the GDPR policy we have already covered, internet services and emails, IT securities, online payment, how this wallet and plastic money is going to be used, and what are the basics of word processing. So this whole course is going to be bifurcated into part A and part B. Part A is going to talk about the 12 chapters. Up to 12 chapters we have already covered, which starts with the preamble of computers, and then little bit talking about the certain changes which is having with the change of time, and then basics of word processing. So now we are moving towards the second part, which starts with the PowerPoint, and how we are going to work with the PowerPoint, because in today's scenario the presentation is very important. More you are presentable, more you are going to be understandable to others. So keeping in mind this particular session, which is part of our course called BCOS, Computer Application Business, and consists under the ambit of block 4, PowerPoint presentations and multimedia. And we have seen that this unit 13 starts talking about the working with PowerPoint. Unit 14 talks about multimedia, video making and YouTube, and unit 15 talks about creating business presentations. So this particular block is emphasizing more on PowerPoint and how this PowerPoint is going to helpful once you are visualizing your text in the particular format. So this PowerPoint includes the animation or the multimedia way of doing the thing, because the whole scenario had been changed. Now we have moved from text based to graphic based, and now graphic based to video based. So this PowerPoint presentation is one of the leading steps in this direction. So if you talk about this particular presentation, or the particular the session which we are taking today is focusing more on the basics of PowerPoint, and further extends towards the learning and use of different elements in our presentation to make it more informative and effective. So this is the purpose behind the PowerPoint, and PowerPoint is also known as the acronym called PPT. So PowerPoint is a complete presentation graphic package. It is one of the major office programs which enable the users to draw diagrams, present graphics and data and other things in a presentable manner. So what we have seen that this PowerPoint is making the things quite presentable in nature, and this PPT is an abbreviation for PowerPoint. So PPT stands known as PowerPoint presentation, and which talks about as a software tool developed by Microsoft, which and on the other hand there are certain open source softwares. In the preceding sessions we have talked about how this open source software is coming, and how this open softwares are playing a very important role as far as this reaching to the unleashed to the is concerned. So very easily if the software is open, anybody can use it, anybody can make it view, anybody can do the certain changes into it. So but this particular package is part of the Microsoft, presents information in slideshow format, and we will see that when you make a presentation it moves under certain slides. So first slides you can talk about the preamble part. On the other hand, the second slide is going to talk about other things. So and these slides are equipped with text, graphics, sound effects and video. So you can very easily imbibe these kind of content into it, and it could be quite useful, because it's not making the presentation agile, but somewhere make it more interesting, because learners can get a flavor of certain graphics, get a flavor of certain videos which can interlink with one another. So when you are interacting with somebody, when you are making a presentation, I think you are not just presenting in a monotonous manner, but somewhere you are putting a flavor of graphics or sounds which make the things more agile and active. So PowerPoint is intention is very clear. It's going to talk about these aspects. So if you go more into the backdrop or its origination, I think Microsoft PowerPoint is a presentation program created by Robert Gaskin and Dennis Austin at a software company named Forethought Incorporation. And this Forethought had been founded in 1983 to create an integrated environment and application for future personal computers that would provide a graphical user interface. I think if we talk about 2 decades or 3 decades back, and in our preceding session, when we were talking about the first generation computers or second generation or third generation, we have covered that the software development was started with the DOS format, the disk operating system format, which was more emphasizing on the CUI format, that is command user interface. But right now this model had been changed, and we have moved from CUI to graphical user interface, which talks about how the graphics is going to be executed with the help of text, or parallel with the text. So it was released on April 20, 1987, initially for Macintosh system operating system based computers only, and PowerPoint was originally designed to provide visuals for group presentations within business organizations, but has come to be very widely used in many other communication situations, both in business and beyond. So this what we have observed, that the way things is going to be changed. And if you talk about the Microsoft Office suite, which have a basket of the MS Word, which we have already covered in our preceding sessions, and if you go into the backdrop, you will find out that Word is the most powerful word processing software, and it can overview the different features of Microsoft Word. Participants will learn to use Microsoft. They can make a report, they can make a project, they can inbuild certain images, but it cannot be in a presentable format. Professionally looking documents, you can keep the documents, you can use it for future purpose. But as far as the presentation is concerned, PowerPoint is one of the steps in this direction, and it can give participants about how to create a PowerPoint presentations. Functions covered in these sessions are how to create a slide, add content, text, graphics, objects in picture to start a show. So now the PowerPoint is working as a show. It can make the things in a presentable format, and it can be quite useful, or easier for the learner to mug up the things. And the third aspect is the Microsoft Excel, which we are going to cover in our forthcoming session, and which talks about the advanced Excel and advanced tutorials, and how these tables, formulas and charts for managing small to large scale business process can supposed to involved as far as the data is concerned. Because when you talk about the data is quite gigantic in nature, and you need certain rows and columns, certain tables which can tabulate the things. So this particular Excel spreadsheet is emphasizing more on that, so which can be covered in the forthcoming sessions. So anyway, what you can do in PowerPoint that need to be taken care. You create a presentation using PowerPoint. The presentation is made up of a series of slides or pages, we can say, and the slides that you create use PowerPoint can also be presented as an overhead transparency. So there was a time when we physically make the slides in the overhead projectors, but now these overhead projectors had been replaced by overhead transparencies, and these transparencies are taking more about all those aspects. So the slides can be printed as audience handouts, outlines and speaker notes. You can format all the slides in a presentation using the slide master. You can put certain header, certain footer. You can keep your entire presentation in a single file, or your slides, speaker notes and audience handouts. So this is one of the way where you can interlink the videos with the audio, or with the particular presentation. And PowerPoint is compatible with other Office programs like Word and Excel. So very easily you can make it compatible with other applications, and you can import what you have created in other Microsoft products in any of your slides, and you can import videos and sounds to the presentation. So in our coming sessions, we will see how we are going to import the videos and sounds in the presentation, and how this is going to be quite useful for the learners when they are making the presentations. And there are certain things which we have to follow for a successful presentation, that you have to plan carefully, do your research, this is very important. If you are not going to do the research, ultimately what will happen, you're not going to make a slide which can work as a ready reckoner kind of, and which can be useful for the viewer. So know your audience. You have to make the presentation as per the audience desires, or time of your presentation. That is more important, because if the presentation is quite long, or it's quite lengthy, then in case what will happen, the audience who are listening or viewing can somewhat bored from that. So practice your presentation. That is more important. Speak comfortably and clearly, and after doing all those things, there are certain effective PowerPoint slides, like what kind of templates you are going to use, and how you are going to design the template. There must be standardized position. Color and styles are very important ingredients. So what color you are going to choose in the background, in the front end, so that the texts which are depict over there cannot be intermingle or overlap. So limit the information to essentials. Content should be self-evident. That is more important. Use colors that contrast. Be consistent. Effects, transitions and animation need to be done, and you have to be quite consistent. It's not like that the first slide talks about the different animations, the different background music, whereas the second slide is going to talk about the different animation or the different. So effect, transition and animation need to be homogeneous, and it could be consistent, which can make the learner acquainted with the particular circumstances and scenario. So excessive slides can lose your audience. That is very true. If you make excessive slides and you're not speaking extempore, I think somewhere the audience need to be deviated, and it will have a different impact. So be sure that contrast with the background is there. Fancy fonts are hard to read. It's very true. And if the fonts are in big size or in all caps, is again creating a different format. So the heading should be done in a caps format, whereas the running text should be in the routine font. So avoid abbreviation and acronyms, because somewhere these abbreviations and acronyms are not familiar with the viewers, so they can deviate from the presentation. So limit punctuation marks. And bulleting is very important. When you are going to bullet, give structures, organization to slides. Limit to 6 bullets per slide, because if you are going to make numerous bullets, I think somewhere that the size of the font or size of the text is going to be smaller, and it is somewhat creating a problem. So make bullet visible. 18 to 24 is the standard format as far as the running text is concerned, and as far as the heading is concerned, it has to be somewhere around 40 font. So limit each bullet to 6 words. Contrast the text with the background, and animation is there, so don't get carried away. Restrict animations to certain slides. It's not like that you can make animation, because if you are more talking about the animation, it will have a very special emphasis, and so animation can demonstrate how something works. So excessive animation, if you put in this, I think it's talk about the childish approach, which need to be eliminated. So apply sound effects whenever you require. So PPT offers interesting variations. Use pre-made templates, create your own, because when you make a pre-made templates or create your own, I think the homogeneity is there, and there must be the common header or footer which can come up, or the colors come up when you make the thing. So the following gives link to the online tutorials, and slideshows are not your presentations. Use PPT as an outline. Don't read verbatim from your PPT. That is very true, because if you put the text and start reading, I think somewhere the impact of the presentation is going to be have less impact. So avoiding there are certain pitfalls of bad slides which need to be done. So if you are going to avoid these pitfalls, I think you will have a very good presentation, and this is going to be quite useful for the learners. So make your first or second slide an outline for your presentations. Like previous slide is how you are going to recapitulate, or follow the order of your outline for the rest of the presentation. Only place main points of the outline slide. So like for example, use the titles of each slide as the main points. So if you are putting the main points, I think very easily you can explain those points, and learner can also, or the the viewer can also make an interest into that. So if you talk about the slide structure, there are certain good slide structures. Use 1 or 2 slides per minute for your presentations. Write in point form, not complete sentence. Include 4 points per slide. Avoid wordiness. Use keywords and phrases only. That could be quite important. And when you're going to talk about the bad slide structure, this page contains too many words for a presentation slide. It is not written in point form, making it difficult both for your audience to read and for you to present each point. Although there are exactly the same number of points on this slide as the previous slide, it looks much more complicated. In short, your audience will spend too much time trying to read this paragraph instead of listening to you. So if you have a point based model, I think somewhere the learners or the viewers are just trying to emphasize on your part rather than just going into the depth of reading the slides. So if you talk about the slide structure, show one point at a time, will help audience concentrate on what you are saying, will prevent audience from reading ahead, will help you keep your presentation focused. And if you talk about the bad slide structures, I think there are certain good way of making the slide and there are certain bad way of making the slide structure. Do not use distracting animations. Do not go overboard with the animations. Be consistent with the animation that you use. So if you are consistent with the animations, I think what will happen, it means that you are emphasizing on the content rather than on the technology. The good fonts are you use at least 18 points font, and use different size font for main points and secondary points. I think for heading you have one standard format or standard font, and whereas when you're talking about the subheadings, it have got a secondary points. So this can somewhat make the viewer acquainted with that that you are using this particular point for headings, for subheadings, and for main headings. So the main point is 28, or if you talk about the running text are in general in 24 points, whereas the heading is in 40 points. So use standard font like Times Roman or Arial, which is quite useful font. And somewhat when you are copying the file or in a particular gadgets or in a laptop, you will find out if there is no chances of font mismatch. So the standard format, if you have font you have, it can be quite useful for them. So if you use a small font, your audience won't be able to read what you have written. Capitalize only when necessary. It is difficult to read, and don't use a complicated font. That is very true, that if you use a complicated font, what will happen, that somewhat the viewers are deviated from that. So use a color font that contrasts sharply with background, like blue font or white background. Use color to reinforce the logic of your structure. Light blue title and dark blue text, or use color to emphasize the point, but only use this occasionally. That is very true. And if you talk about the bad colors, if you see, I think it have got multiple the text in different colors, and it can somewhat confuse the viewers to go for it. So using color for decoration is distracting and annoying. Use a different color for each point is unnecessary, and using a font color that does not contrast with the background color is hard to read. So I think we have to avoid these colors, because somewhere the deviation need to occur. So background, if you're talking about a good background, is that you use backgrounds such as this one that are attractive but simple, and use backgrounds which are light, and use the same background consistently throughout your presentation. That is more important. We have observed that in majority of cases the learners, or when they are presenting anything, they present the things with a multiple color format, with a multiple color slides. So somewhere this need to be avoided. So I think if you talk about the bad background, you see that in the background you will find out multiple colors are there which somewhat distract the text. So this need to be avoided. And certain animations are also somewhat coming up which also distract somewhere. So these backgrounds which distract with certain images need to be eradicated or avoided. So if you talk about the good graphs, use graphs rather than just charts and words. Data in graphs is easier to comprehend and retain than in raw data. So trends are easier to visualize in graph form, and always title your graphs. That is more important. And when you are going to title the graph, I think learner can view that particular graph and as well as see the the title, and from there they can do it. So graphs are these are the bad graphs where you can make certain tables with different colors, and good graphs are this, like where you can have a flavor of the graphical interpretation, not the text presentation, or a combination of that. So we have seen that there are blue balls and there are red balls. So and these are explained with the help of bars and quite easier to comprehend or understand. So, and when you're going to talk about the bad graphs, it could be like this, where certain the fluorescent colors are used, which somewhat deviate the viewers to go for that. So graphs, the bad graphs are minor guidelines and unnecessary, font is too small, colors are illogical, title is missing, and shading is distracting. So when you're talking about the graphs, I think the shading need to be avoided. So spelling and grammars are very important, and if you are putting a wrong spelling or the wrong grammars, I think somewhere the issue comes, and this somewhat deteriorate the performance of the presenters. So proof your slides for spelling mistakes, use of repeated words, grammatical errors you might have make. If English is not your first language, please have someone else check your presentation, because when you are presenting, I think the text is also going on. So, and if you put a spelling mistakes in that text, or the grammatical error is there somewhere, the embarrassment need to come. So so now when you are going to talk about effective and storing a strong presentation, I think audience is likely to remember your last word. So there must be certain the phrases or the quotations are mentioned at the end, or how you are going to recapitulate, and there must be, which is in the form of summarizing or concluding slides, summarizing the main points of a presentation and suggest future avenues of research. So, and at the end, when you have concluded everything, I think end of a presentation with simple question slide is there. Invite your audience to ask questions. So that is something which is there, because since you have talked so much about the particular theme and with the help of presentation, so there must be certain question rounds where audience need to be invited and provide an opportunity to ask certain questions. So provide a visual aid during question period, avoiding or ending a presentation abruptly, because if you end a presentation abruptly, I think somewhere the questions which need to be taken care avoided. So these are the things which need to be done, and it is quite good that PowerPoint presentation is going to play a very important role when you are going to talk about this particular aspect. And this PowerPoint, as I have already talked about, is part of our fourth block. And in this particular block, we have three important chapters, which and the one is talking about working with PowerPoint. Like everybody is familiar with PowerPoint, but how you are going to work with the PowerPoint, that is more important, which we have already covered. And the remaining two chapters, which emphasize more on multimedia, video making and YouTube, and then creating business presentations, like how you're going to make a business presentation, because end of the day, the genesis behind this particular course is that how you're going to apply the computer in business. And when you're going to talk about the computers, you have to talk about the text, you have to talk about presentation. So anyway, I think we have talked a lot about this particular theme called PowerPoint presentations, and we in the coming sessions we will see how this video is going to revamp the whole presentation, because today scenario talks about the multimedia, talks about the making the videos either through YouTube or other mode. So that we are going to cover in our forthcoming sessions, and then we are going to make a presentation which can be useful for the business houses. So as an entrepreneur, when you are going to start your entity or go for the startups, I think the presentation is somewhere where you can interact with your venture capitalists or with the financial institutions to know more about that, how to generate money. Thank you very much. Thank you.